All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls that are watching this. I gotta say, boys and girls, for our TikTok followers that have joined the Freedom and Wealth Seekers movement. I welcome all the young people to this movement. Folks, exciting last couple of days for me. I appreciate all of the birthday wishes, the text messages, the phone calls. I really appreciated the DMs. Thank you. I am the young age of 31. I'm just kidding, 41. And I'm just blessed and privileged to be here with you all. I am really, truly, if you just stumbled upon this podcast, when I say that, I mean it. Uh, my life has flashed before my eyes a couple of times throughout my journey. That's one thing I will start doing is sharing more real life experiences along the Freedom and Wealth Seekers movement, because everybody can relate to different things. Some things that I've gone through that I believe in, you're not going to believe in, you may not relate to, but I'm going to share my story anyway. In 2010, I was in the ICU for 7 days. Okay, that happened to me. Almost didn't make it out of there, but God had another plan. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you can relate to that. If it's not yourself, it may have been a loved one or somebody that you really care about that may have been or may be going through that situation right now. Wow. Last couple of days, I put a goal out there, and I did that for a couple of reasons. Not just because I'm a Tupac Shakur fan, not just to clout chase, that's what y'all young folks call it, or capping, to really show like you can have an idea one day and then you can start executing your plan to achieve that idea. And that's all I did. It happened. You all saw it. The folks that follow this podcast, we're on episode 23, by the way. You saw me birth an idea and then bring it to fruition. Okay. And I've done that several times throughout my life. So a good friend of mine, she told me, she said, your mind is one of the most powerful things you all own. So when you make your mind up to do something, if you put enough willpower behind it, if you put enough drive behind it, it's going to happen. So my goal was to bring one of Tupac's best friends, Mouse Man, Dana Smith, somebody I read about in this book about Tupac's life in Baltimore. I said, I want to bring him to the Freedom and Wealth Seekers podcast, because this is a guy that grew up with Tupac for a certain amount of years here in Baltimore, that was with Tupac during the developmental stages of his career and his early life. He was there for the struggle. He was there when Tupac, became a superstar. And I said, I want to bring this guy to the Freedom and Wealth Seekers platform, because he can shed light on what hard work, dedication, consistency really looks like. He even talked about the importance of having a mentor. And some of you are seeking out a mentor. That's one of the things that he wished Tupac and himself had as they were trying to find their way in the world. Mentorship isn't just for real estate, it's for almost every aspect, really, truly every aspect of your life. So I hope you all were able to watch that candid interview. It was actually more like a conversation. It was almost as if we knew each other for years, right? It was a conversation. And those make some of the best interviews. It wasn't scripted. We didn't have an outline. I mean, if you watched it to the end, you could tell that we just went straight off the cuff, right? And we got really transparent, and he shared a lot. He shared a lot. I sent out, I'm going to get into that in a moment, but I sent out a video because Mouse Man was like, Marcel, I don't know You know, if it's a fit for your platform, you talk about investing. I say, it's a perfect fit because a lot of the people that I teach, a lot of them are starting from scratch. And Tupac's story is a story of someone that started from scratch. He made something happen with an idea, with a vision. So if you all watched that interview, just put a yes in the chat. If you all watched that interview, put a yes in the chat for me. Because I want to make sure you guys are, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are actually seeing the content, you're watching the content, because I may have another idea to bring somebody else on the platform. Okay, good, good, good. So a couple of people already are chatting that they did watch that interview, which is huge. That interview for me was also enlightening. Just learning more and more about that journey that they took and how fast it happened. And I look at that as, and I talk all the time about speed of implementation. Okay. When Tupac moved to Baltimore, his mom was on welfare, right? They didn't have any electricity in the apartment, the first floor apartment on Greenmount Avenue. Okay. She also was on crack, right? She was a crack addict. So Tupac, being 14 years old, couldn't get a job, did not venture into the street life. It was right in his neighborhood, but he decided he was going to focus on music. He was going to listen to music every day. He was going to write songs every day. He was going to rap other people's songs to develop a cadence, to develop a rhythm, to develop a voice, to develop a style. He worked on his craft every day. He practiced, practice, 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 practice. Now, from 14, so you got 14, 15, 16, 17. He moves to the West Coast. So from 14 to 17, he was in Baltimore 4 years. He practiced, 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 practiced every single day. And I said, wow, this is a great example because I teach people how to invest in real estate. And the only way you become successful at closing a deal, at putting a deal under contract, is you implement the strategies, whether it's picking up the phone, calling a potential property owner, whether it's you driving around, locating a vacant property, putting that property in your database, whether it's you researching properties using uspropertysearch.com or another database, but you're doing it every single day. Practice, 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 practice. So I make the comparison. I look at Tupac 4 years from 14, really 13 to 17. He practiced every day. And if you followed that interview with his best friend, all of a sudden, first breakthrough happens. Arsenio Hall show. Soon after Arsenio Hall show, another breakthrough. He gets a record deal. And then we all know the rest of that story. But it took practice, 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 practice to get to that point of breakthrough. And it was a true struggle. So I sent that video, that interview out to all of you. I emailed it out. I started getting feedback from other people in my network that were around Tupac. I had a gentleman call me early this morning, like, man, I remember he was at Dunbar High School in Baltimore. Now that's a school known for basketball and football in Baltimore City. He said Tupac hung with this one guy named Chico, and every day in the lunchroom, he would bang on the table. Chico would bang on the table doing beats. and Tupac would be rapping over the beat. And he said, all of a sudden, crowds started forming around the lunch table. These are unheard stories. I never heard that story before. Okay. Forming around the lunch table, and Tupac would perform during lunch at Dunbar High School. This all came about from reading this book, right? Reading, write that word down, reading. Like, it's so important to read. That's how we become knowledgeable, right? That's how we become knowledgeable. I mean, you know what Frederick Douglass has done. Okay, Dr. Martin Luther King has done. We read, right? You have to read to gain new information. You have to listen. Like technology now, you don't even have to read. You can listen to new information. But with that information, you have to implement. You have to implement. But not only that, reading sparks your mind. It unlocks things that may have been locked away for years. The only reason why I'm talking about Tupac Shakur is because I had a personal experience with him. And from reading that book back in the day, it unlocked that experience that took place over 30 years ago. Okay, reading unlocked that experience. So I sent out a video I recorded and put on Instagram, and that video is starting to pick up some traffic. It's got like 80 comments or whatever. But it also talked about, like, that video, like that story about my mom. Like, I mentioned the word, you got to have guts, right? You got to have guts. You got to have some type of belief. Like, I had to drive. I'm sorry. I had to ride my bike past the light pole. I didn't mention that I was on the sidewalk. Didn't even ride my bike in the street. I was like 8 or 9 years old, right? Um, I was afraid because I knew if I went past that light pole, I may suffer some consequences. I had fear. I didn't know what I was going to encounter, but I knew the goal was to reach that alley, Snake Alley. That was the goal. That was the goal. And I didn't share this in the video, but when I got down to supposedly the location where Snake Alley was located, all the kids knew in the neighborhood, hey, Snake Alley's down near the mayor's house. I get to the mayor's house, there's not an alley in sight. So I'm bewildered. I'm like, I was led astray. And then I hear music. And I hear kids and teenagers making a lot of noise. In the video I shared on IG, I said they were throwing water bottles at each other. No, they were throwing water balloons. But I was excited talking about that. I think I misstepped another word in that video as well. But they were throwing water balloons at each other. And when I cracked open, I'm on my bike. I cracked open the fence. Boom. Tupac jumps out. Hey, little nigga, you trying to come in here? With a smile on his face, that same $1 million smile that we know of him today. But it was a welcoming experience. I was confused. I was totally shocked because I was taught. Now I'm going deep here now. I was taught that word was a bad word. Some of you will agree, some of you will disagree. But there is a such thing as a cultural divide and a cultural gap that exists in this world. All of my peers and my friends are born in the 80s. We embrace that word. Yes, we know that it derives from the other N word. And I'm going to share the story one day when I was called the other N word and how it made me feel. And what happened next. But that particular day was my introduction to a culture that I wasn't privy to at the time, that a lot of my peers were actually, they had access to. But that day, it was an enlightening day, and I felt Tupac Shakur's energy. Life is all about energy. I want y'all to write that down, energy, write that word down. I really want y'all to understand energy. And this is through my lens. Tupac gave the world a lot of his energy. That's why we know who he is. Again, he started rapping way before he got to Baltimore. He moved to Baltimore at 13, 14. But I know what he did here. He put out nothing but energy. You got folks, he dropped out of high school his senior year. He dropped out. But he put enough energy into the world that it took care of him, it took care of his family. Till this day, his family's taken care of. His brother, his sister, his mom was taken care of through his energy, right? I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but I want to get back to the advice my parents had given me, okay, about that word. But I got to touch on that energy because I felt his energy that day. It was a positive energy. It was an energy of abundance. It was a welcoming energy. And many people that 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 knew him or met him before that I know say the same exact thing, right? So when you put energy out here, like break it down to you. If you got 1,000 leads, I'm gonna relate all of this to real estate. If you have 1,000 leads in front of you, well, nothing's gonna happen to those 1,000 leads unless you put some type of energy into those leads. Like nothing's happening. That's just how the world works. I could give you a house today, vacant, needs to be fixed up. If I give you that house, you still got to put some energy into the house, whether it's energy and just taking it and selling it, whether it's energy and you fixing it up, whether it's energy that you have to put towards pulling the permits, hiring the contractors, you still got to put energy out there, right? So Tupac, he figured it out. He figured out the more energy he put out into the world, the faster he could change his family and himself. He could change their situation. He could change their situation. See, that's why I created this segment highlighting the life of Tupac Shakur. That's one of the reasons, because this is an individual that took his energy and changed his situation. Not only his situation, other people that were around him as well. So Mouse Man, Dana Smith, he was one of his friends. His situation ended up changing as well throughout life. Okay. And the same thing, I mean, you apply those same principles to anything that you do in life. You can take it as far as you want. Like there is truly no cap on what you can create. So going back to my parents' belief, about that word, they also um they were born into belief systems. Go to school, get a good education, get a good job. Nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, Black America owns the least amount of wealth in the United States. We own the least amount of wealth in the United States. That's a problem. That is a problem. So the clip I shared with you, I just uploaded it to our YouTube channel, the Freedom and Wealth Seekers YouTube channel, is a clip of a young 22-year-old, Tupac Shakur, had no experience in investing in real estate, but he talked about some very important things. He talked about the right that we have as Americans, as African Americans, to bear arms. He talked about purchasing firearms. He also talked about stockpiling on supplies, generators, just being prepared. But he said two other things. He said we need to stockpile our money. He said we need to buy our house. And I interpreted that as owning our property, right? Because when you own your property, guess what you can do? You can tell people to get off your property. Nobody can take that property from you for the most part. But if you rent, well, you're at the mercy of the landlord, the bank. Landlord can say, hey, I'm selling. You got to move. Bank could say, hey, landlord ain't been paying that mortgage. You got to move. So Tupac was so far ahead of his time. So far ahead of his time. But his message still lives today. I've been telling all my students, so my students have been calling me, Marcel, I like what you're doing. I like that you're sharing, other stories, this, that, and the third. I said, are you taking heed to the information though? One of my students, he called me today, he said, man, this confirmed that I have to take advantage of this digital world. And he started sending me pictures today of his cameras that he just purchased to create digital content. I got to shout out Jennifer Jordan, who is making content for her real estate business. She's a real estate investor and she's also a licensed realtor. And she has been taking advantage of this content. She's been taking advantage of the opportunity to create content, and she's been putting out content about her brand and her business. So I said something. I said, Tupac's been gone like 20, 25 years, y'all. But his content is still here on earth, thriving. It's still here. When you pass away, will you have something tangible that future generations will be able to look at, be inspired by, be educated on? Like, really let that sink in. It wasn't a mistake he was here. The other reason why I decided to highlight Tupac Shakur is because he has been in so much of a negative light when he got to stardom that a lot of the generations before me really don't give him a time of day, and they're not able to listen and hear what he had to say. And I tried to, Dana and I, we tried to make it a point that a lot of that negativity that's out there on Tupac, that was a very, very small part of his life. That was like the end of his life. When he got involved, he was in two shootings. One shooting is where he ended up passing away. And he had some other legal issues. And not to say he was a perfect person. He definitely wasn't. But a lot of times the negative things that happen to somebody in life end up getting more attention than all of the positive things. That's just the way the world looks. And sometimes you have to dig to find the positivity. So outside of Tupac's music and his acting, he also had a passion to teach people about who they were. This was just his makeup. He was raised by two Black Panthers at some point of his life. He also talked a lot about the disconnect between the people in our society that look like us, who have made it in life, got the college educations, got the jobs, but forgot about where they're from. And this is so important because it's easy to turn on the news and to see what's going on in the city every day of your life. It's easy to go home, turn on the news, and see what's going on in the city and shake your head and say, "Oh, I feel sorry," and "Oh, it's a shame." But to just do it over and over again. But what we're witnessing to this day, to this day, are people dying that aren't as fortunate as we are. We see our people suffering. Yes, they're crazy events that do take place, but since I've been on Earth, since '81, and I started understanding the news, I only see black on black crime for decades now. Been 4 decades. That's what I see. Have I been able to do anything about it? I've given my time, I've given my money. I'm not out there every single day with the youth, but I've done something. A lot of us have forgotten. And that's what Tupac was amplifying while he was here. That's what he was amplifying while he was here. So, this is a special podcast number 23. The GOAT, greatest of all time, wore that jersey number, Michael Jordan. This is a special, I'm going to call it GOAT episode, because to me, Tupac Shakur is one of the greatest of all time. Actors, entertainers, and activists of my time, of my generation, even though he was 10 years older than me. The way he moved myself, my peers, and generations after me, he's still moving them. It's not a lot of entertainers, there's not a lot of people in the world you can say that. Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Like, their message still resonates today. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman. So up until Tupac's birthday is June 16th, I'm going to share more and more inspirational content, interviews that I believe relate to this movement, the Freedom and Wealth Seekers movement, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to make our lives better. And that was what I believe Tupac's mission was. He wanted to make people's lives better through his music, through his story, through his inspiration. and he wasn't shy about it. Now, did he say some off the wall stuff sometimes? Yes, he did. I don't agree with everything he said talked about. He was a little off the cuff sometimes, but he off the hook. But guess what? He was 20, 21, 22 years old. If y'all had met me at 22, y'all probably wouldn't be listening to me right now because I wasn't even in real estate. And if you heard that interview, it wasn't all peaches and cream for me growing up. I've been incarcerated. It wasn't all peaches and cream. All right. So, folks, I'm going to leave you with that. Next week, episode 24, another GOAT number, Kobe Bryant. I'm a basketball fiend. But look for some emails. I'm going to be shooting content all week. The Freedom and Wealth Seekers Academy is set to launch this month. We already have several members pre-enrolled. If you're interested in enrolling in the Freedom and Wealth Seekers online academy, it is $347 a month. That is a lot cheaper than a car payment, folks. Join the movement. I look forward to seeing you at the other side, more importantly, at the closing table. Look for the content. Share that interview with Tupac. Share the IG post. Like it. Comment underneath. Let's get more people's eyes and ears on the story of Tupac Shakur growing up in Baltimore City. This is one of the best books I read about his life back in the day. I'm going to leave you all with that. Take care, folks. God bless. Bye-bye.